I have your attention. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, today we are very lucky that we have here Assistant Professor Dr. Alberto Innocenti. He is our invited keynote speaker for cities conference tomorrow, and to give the deliver one sessions for the guest lecture. Here we have the undergraduate students for the regional planning. Dr. Alberto Innocenti is an expert in resilience and coastal trainings, and he will deliver the topic. The title is Research-Driven Approach to Develop Odense. Odense is one of the biggest cities in Denmark as a resilient port city. So I think this is somehow still relates to Surabaya. Surabaya is also one of the big port city in Indonesia, very important port city covering the eastern part of Indonesia. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Alberto Innocenti, for coming here. It's our pleasure. So you will be given around 45 minutes for your speech, and then we will continue for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. As you already said, I'm Alberto Innocenti. I'll just give you a brief introduction about me. So, I'm assistant professor at the University of Southern Denmark. I'm part of the research group that is called UNESCO Chair on Urban Resilience. So, we are the only UNESCO Chair on Urban Resilience that works on resilience and is being recognized from UNESCO. And about me, I have a mixed background in which I studied in Milan, at Polytechnic of Milan, architecture. Then I moved to Venice to study planning, and meanwhile I was studying in Barcelona, I was studying geography. So somehow I kind of, during my studies, I touched all the different type of scales, from the building scale to the city and to geography that I even wanted. And I end up doing my PhD at the University of Venice and the University of Copenhagen. And there I work a lot on understanding the interaction between land and sea. So this is one of the topics that they are related to my main topic that is called land and sea interaction. And this topic I developed because a few years ago we had a visiting PhD at our university that was working on resilient port cities concept. So as I was assisting in supervising on this topic, I got a bit in love because I was not really working in that. And then from one thing to another, so that the PhD student is called Martin Balling, and from one thing to another, I have two of my students that they wanted to develop their thesis, their bachelor thesis on this Odense port. And the most funny thing is that in the whole presentation I will never speak about Odense port. I will speak about other ports. Because in order to make resilience Odense, we had to study, we had to understand all the other ports in Europe, how they were working, because they were best practices in Europe. So it's like a bit like one of these Quentin Tarantino movies in which they talk about a robbery and you see the whole movie, but actually you don't see any robbery in the movie. They talk about everything is happening around. So we will talk about other ports, and we will talk in the way we try to understand this concept of urban resilience. In which way? Okay, so next. So we will go very fast, briefly about the port area as a hotspot of land interaction, and then we will talk about the special evolution of port, a paradigm shift from productive to livable, because we will talk exactly about the specific type of port areas, that they are changing from very massive productive to more livable. And let me know if I'm speaking too fast or something is, or if you have any question. Just feel free to interrupt me. And then we will talk about Odense, and the most important thing is that we're going to define the enablers, and the good practice from other ports, and then a few final remarks. So this is a map that is forecasting more or less how the population will grow in coastal areas, because port cities, they are developing coastal areas, and we know that they are the most inhabited cities in the world, because there was trading, because there was more natural resources in coastal areas. So, and here from the United Nations, there was a study, a prediction about the coastal cities. They're gonna increase the population, and so it's clear that we have to work in making those coastal cities more resilient. We have to make them able to get on the piece with the change and understand how we can deal with them. So the next, here for example, we see how in between 70 and 79 was the average of container to ports, and how was in 2009. So as you can see, the movement of and the trades of goods all around the world, it increased in an amazing way. And what happened is, in which way is happening? That also the ports are changing the way they are working. They change how they are planned, and also sometimes they are change also the place where one time we were used to have port, and they have to move somewhere else because they have to keep growing, because they have new technology, bigger crews, bigger tank pools. So, and this is just to give an understanding that general scale how much trade we have in between the whole world. So how the ports are growing. And here we're gonna talk just a little bit fast about what is the port, how the port develop and how the port change to the time. So this is a beautiful paint that you can find in Naples, and this is called Tavola Strozzi. And I show always this because, as you can see already in 1470, something like that, this was the city of Naples. So we can see how much it's important living on coastal areas, the trading, the way of living. So we can see that the interaction between human and the coast, the human and the port, they were already there from centuries. And I always like to show because somehow they changed, the city now has changed the type of buildings, but the relation is still there and is still the same. In different ways, but it is always like that. And there is something that I think is relevant to understand also is that this is part of the harbor of Singapore. And you can see the harbor, that sometimes the harbor in the past was very much divided. So it was like the harbor that is part of the city, and usually is not accessible. So if you are working or if you are dealing with the trading or with that work, or the port work, you are in the port. It's obviously part of the city because it's located next to the city. But in many cases, there is a clear, strict division in between the port and the city. And so you have the city behind, and then you have the port in front. And in most of the cases, even though you are a port city, sometimes you don't have a direct access to the sea. And that is something that is often is happening in most of the very developed cities, that they have big port. So here from Holly, I can show a bit which was the relationship between the city and the ports. So we start from before the 19th centuries, in which they were the primitive port city, that could be the image that I showed before of the paint, in which there was this port that was part of the city, and they were overlapping. Also because the trading was lower and was a bit more easy, the relation in between the 19th century and the early 20th century, the port, they were expanding. And in many cases, they were expanding the port a bit outside the city. So there were still part of the port in the city, but the production was getting bigger. They needed more spaces because they were increasing their port activities, so they had to expand. Until the mid-20s with the more modern industrial port cities, which they were very much developed even more outside the city. This in Europe we have in many cities like Rotterdam, Antwerp, in Belgium, which there is still the historical city port, but the development of the harbors, since that has also chemical areas, was like taking kilometers outside the cities because they needed much more space in order to develop specific practice, like chemical industrial areas. To then, in the 1960s, 1980s, what was left inside the port area to return into some of these projects of waterfront regeneration. So in Europe we have a lot of waterfront regeneration, which they try to bring back part of the port area into a more livable areas where you could have tourism coming and stuff like that. And then from the 70s to the 90s, we have this redevelopment of the waterfront that turned in between the 1980s and in 2000 in these port city links, in which sometimes right now we still have this new redevelopment waterfront, but they are trying to make a link also with the port activities because it's part of the whole system. So this is, for example, as you can see, is the development of the harbor in Rotterdam. As you can see, the old historical port area was down there. And slowly during as you can see the color, during the period is developed outside the estuaries of the port. So as you can see, the Rotterdam harbor is one of the biggest in the world, at least it's the biggest in Europe, and has a massive production in which has a different type of production inside the harbor. And this is the way how many of European ports they develop. So slowly from the city center they develop outside because they needed more space. They had new logistic, bigger tank that they couldn't anymore get into the old port. So some of the activity are still inside for smaller tank, and all for the bigger tank they are outside the cities. Also because it was in this period was not only growing or developing the port, but it was also developing the city of Rotterdam. So it was getting bigger, and somehow the port was seen as a polluting type of activity. So they kind of developed a bit more outside the city. So this is, in general terms, a port-city relationship of today, in which we have the port that is operating in big networks that sometimes, even though you are in Denmark or you are in Holland there, in Netherlands, you have activities that goes, or there are tanks that goes through the other side of the world. So we have very much big dynamics that they are seen also for cities and for cities as having a lot of negative externalities. And some of these externalities is, for example, pollution. People think that ports pollute. Or we have also environmental issues. So I don't know, many of you know that when we have a tank, a big tank container ship that is moving from A to B, from Singapore to Rotterdam, in most of the case goes from A to B empty and then gets back full from B to A. So The biggest problem is that when it has to go empty, somehow it doesn't go empty, the ship. So they have the so-called ballast water. So the ship is filled with water in the Singapore port, and then goes full of water, seawater, till Rotterdam. When it gets there, they empty those tanks, the ballast water they empty, and then they fill the ship with the containers. So what happens when they do this is that when they fill the tanks with water, they take also animal species, bacteria, and when they get to Rotterdam, they release. So what happens nowadays is that in many situations, in the Mediterranean Sea, for example, also in other seas, we have invasive species. So we have fishes that our environment or our small habitat, natural habitat ecosystem was not used to have. So for example, now in the Mediterranean Sea, we have lionfish. And it's very dangerous because we don't have predators that can eat lionfish. So they are conquering our seas and they are destroying our ecosystem. And this is happening not only in the Mediterranean, it's things that happen all over. So right now we are invaded from blue crabs in the Mediterranean and in the north of Europe. So for example, ports can have a lot of externalities because actually there are many dynamics that they are happening. And some of these dynamics are also related to globalized economy, climate change issue, and also that there are also many actors that they are involved inside the port activities and the port cities. The problem is that not many times they are involved citizens, because there are other actors, other stakeholders that they have much stronger power in taking decisions in port activities. So in many cases it's very difficult to plan and to deal with port activities because the citizen and who have real needs sometimes doesn't have voice inside this relationship between ports. So here you can see a bit some of which is the landscape of the port, which are the stakeholder things, activity that they are happening and having inside the port. So we have activity at sea, activity at land, because things are coming from the sea, ships are coming from the sea, but when they come into the port, then they go through land, because there is a logistic that brings the material and the goods in other places. And in the middle there are many activities that they are happening. So there are administration building, logistic, port industry, infrastructure, and then there are also a lot of other stakeholders and people that represent port activities. So from corporate and scientific people, and also architecture, because when we talk about the development of port cities, we have also architects or planners that they are involved. So this is a bit of a sort of a city port cityscape that was developed from Carol Hain, that is working at the TU Delft in the Netherlands. So as I was trying to explain, we had different type of port cityscape. One in which there is a clear division between port and city, as I was saying before, with the example of Singapore. And then this is what in the last century we are trying to foster a bit more, in which there is a more dynamic, pluralistic port, sort of a port cityscape, in which we understand that port is also polluting and has a lot of externalities, but at the same time is part of the economy of a city or of a region. So we cannot completely take away as an activity, but actually we have to find ways to make it working and to have relation with it. So it means that we can find better way to deal with port and port cities in order to have a more integrated system. So, and this is just in brief, there are many ways in which you can be resilient when you talk about resilience. So you can have the engineer resilience, in which you try to have a single equilibrium that you bound back. So you have a problem that gets outside, and you try to, and a system is resilient when it gets back to how it was before. Then you have an ecological resilience, in which you have this multiple type of equilibrium, in which you can have disturbances, and then you get back many times because the system is able to adapt somehow. But what we are more into, and what we are trying to watch a bit more, is the socio-ecological evolutionary resilience, in which we believe that there is not a proper equilibrium. So we will not have any kind of equilibrium because things are happening, the world and the environment is changing. So we cannot always think that we can get back as it was in the way we wanted, but we have actually to adapt and transform our environment. So in this case, our port, in something that we have to somehow to bunch forward instead to get back to the system as it is. So actually things like climate event or other economic issues, they can happen, and we cannot think to get back to that, but maybe we can think that we can bunch in a new period in which we have to be able to transform our society, our port, our cities, and be able to adapt to the new challenge. So this is somehow I wanted to highlight in which way also we watch towards resilience. So, and here you can see in which way. So if we choose the evolutionary resilience, we make more relational with space, and we are also having a more adaptive planning, because we try to adapt, understand which are the new situation, the new problem, and we try to adapt. And this is a concept that was developed from W. That is probably the most famous researcher that talked about resilience and definition and theory about resilience. So this is a small example about the port of Rotterdam again, in which this was one of the oldest part of the harbor, so the old part of the harbor that has less activities, less industrial activities, because it's much more developed outside the city. And in 2000 they decided to develop a new project for this area of the port, which you can see that in 2020 was developed as a more livable residential impact with still some production, but also with more residential areas. As you can see here, green areas, there are parks, and then there are buildings, and it's forecasted in 2040 to be even more green with less production, more living areas, as you can see. And later on we will go to port more in detail. So when we talk the new development of the harbor port in Odense, so these are some of the pictures of the harbor. So obviously it's not comparable to the port of Surabaya. Odense is the third largest city in Denmark, but there's only 200,000 people. So we are a very small country, very small port. And this was, the Odense harbor was just taken as a point of departure. So actually, they are redeveloped the port. So there is a private company together with the municipality and entrepreneurship that they are trying to redevelop the port into a livable port, which there is a residential area, still part of the production, so there is still this type of both dynamics, a harbor that is still a little bit productive, but at the same time is livable with the residential area with different activities. And the idea is that the municipality and this company asked us if we could give some advice. So we didn't want to give advice how to develop right away, but we wanted to understand how other port cities that they are known as being resilient port cities, good practice in Europe, And we wanted to try to understand what makes them resilient. So which are the elements in which way they were developed in order to be resilient. So here you have some just few images. So there are still some production inside the harbor. Actually, the water of the harbor is polluted from different chemicals because they were having some factories there and some factories about fertilizer. So there are some pollution. And one of the things that happen in many cases in ports in Denmark is that they try to clean the water because people like to swim in the sea. So, and this is a big issue, for example, in the Odense. And then you can see that there were some more historical building and some other places that they were a bit useful to break part here. They were like not really using the proper way. But anyway, so in our research we tried with these students, we tried to define some enablers of good practice. So we try to understand what makes a good port, a resilient port. So which are the things that makes it. So, and in order to do that, we try to understand the spatial distribution of urban functions inside the port areas. So in between those ports that we selected as case studies, we try to understand in which way they develop those ports and how much space the different functions they were taking. So in order to understand, being able to say, okay, a resilient port needs to have at least 40% of green areas. In order to give like some sort of, try to start to understand some standards that might be good when you have to redevelop a port. And then we try to understand which were the typical or the recurrent elements that we were finding in port areas. So that they were more, so if here was more a quantitative analysis because we were like really measuring how much space those different land use they were having inside different ports. This was more qualitative. We were trying to understand the different ports, which type of elements they had in order to make more pleasant a pleasant place design. And then we also dive a little bit into understanding the edge of the port. So if it changed or if it's different in case that is a more residential area or if it's more productive. So the harbor that we choose, they were Oktober, Copenhagen, Aalborg, Hamburg, Thessaloniki, Marseille, Barcelona. So we had some from the south of Europe, some from the north of Europe. We had some harbor which the city has had more than 1 million citizens. Some harbor that they had less than 1 million citizens. I know that it's also very difficult always to make a comparison with port here because also cities because they're way bigger cities than in the old Europe. And also we tried in between the criteria in choosing the harbor, we also try to understand, we also choose harbor that they were more close harbor, like Thessaloniki, so more enclosed, or some that they were more open harbor, like Marseille or Barcelona, or some that they were sort of riverfront harbor, so that they have like Rotterdam or Hamburg or Copenhagen, that they are a bit more inside a sort of estuary or river. So we want to give also this diversity to see what was happening in different conditions. So, and also we wanted to highlight that in which period those they were developed. Because when we are planning, we have also always to take in consideration the time period. Is an important thing because maybe in the 90s, as we saw the development of the port, in the 90s we had other ways of seeing the city, seeing a port as part of the city, and in 2000 we have other needs, other way of seeing the port. So it's very much important also to relate those projects into a timeline. So we have Barcelona that was in between the middle of the 80s till the 90s, and it was redeveloped thanks to the Olympic Games. So there was a specific situation in which made the city of Barcelona redeveloping that harbor. And then you have Aalborg, you have Copenhagen, you have different harbors that also they have, as you can see, they have a development phase and a construction time. And the developing phase sometimes is longer, almost as the construction time. Because in order to take together all the stakeholders, making a broad and understandable and integrative plan, it's also difficult. So it's not that easy to make the phase. So here are some of, actually they are all the harbor that we took into this analysis. So one of the most quantitative part of the analysis was to understand the land use of this port area. So we took the area that is defined as the port areas inside the areas cities that we did as case studies, and we tried to understand in which way they were developed, or in which way they were the land use was. So, and by doing that, we tried for each one to understand how they were divided, public, private, and maritime areas and features. And we were making those schemes that they were divided in percentile in general terms. And then for each port, we were analyzing each of the land use. And so we made it for the single port, but also we made in comparison with the different ports. And we were trying to understand which was the average and the minimum or maximum range of those land use inside the different ports that we took. So for example, this is the comparison in between all the ports, and as you can see, this is a specific focus in which show that for specific activities, for example, in this case, the port of Copenhagen was very low, but there was one that was very high, and we found a sort of an average area in which most of the ports, they were developing the same way. And we did discover that the attraction they usually takes in between 2 and 6% of the new development of the port resident city. It takes from 10 to 14% of green space, 10 to 20% to public space. And then still there are port activities that they are like more, I would say, light port activities, that they are related also to more touristic type of activities. And then there is a 7% of housing, and there is 4-9% of commercial activities, that they are more related to other activities. So the other important thing that we did inside our analysis was to try to understand which were those elements that they were most interesting and recurrent in all the project. So, and we saw that culture as an element was a driven element for developing a resilient port city. Embracing the water, so try to get into the water before in a normal situation of a port activity, the port cities was not an option because there was a port and the city. And you didn't get the access to water. In this new port project, we saw that they were trying to embrace the water. There was a big work on passages of walkability inside the harbor area, green elements, and also experience that we can say that they are also related to culture, but I would say it's a bit more light way of having culture inside port areas. So, and here I will show some of few examples in which for cultural activity there is the Coste Mediterranee that is in Marseille, is a museum in the port, which is a beautiful museum, contemporary museum, that was inside the old port, and is a beautiful example. Embracing the water, obviously, I will show Copenhagen, I'm coming from there. Our office in Copenhagen, our university is in Odense. but we have offices in Copenhagen, and our office is on the canal. So in summertime, when it's nice weather, and it's about 20 degrees, it's not reaching this temperature, we are used after work to meet on the canal and swim. So we stop there, we have a drink together, we eat something, and we go on the canal. You have to think that the canal of Copenhagen, that is actually is sea. So Copenhagen is divided into from a canal that is actually sea. Was polluted because it was a port. Before the 90s, they start to try to clean the port, and right now it's clean. So means that there is not any more port activities that is polluting the sea. All the heavy metals, because one of the main pollutants in port areas are heavy metals, are sedimented. So doesn't mean that it's clean completely. The heavy metals are sedimented on the bottom. So if we don't touch the bottom, the water is clean because it does not have heavy chemicals and heavy metals in the water. But anyway, it's a nice example because they are working a lot and it's a very beautiful place to stay in summertime. Danish people like also to do winter baths. So they do bath also, they use the water also in winter time when it's -5. So they go and jump in the water. I don't, but it's a custom. And then there is the passages, so the walkability, and we show the Rabu in Barcelona. That was a very old project, but they understood that a very important element was the connectivity, the capacity to develop some infrastructure that was allowing the people to move freely in the port area, also maybe a nicer adventure. And then we have green elements, that is, for example, the Opera Park in Copenhagen, and also some other experience that is the Viewport Pavilion in Marseille. So the next. So as you can see here you have the Contemporary Museum in Marseille, in the port area. So the very, very old port that is still having some light activities of marine activities just behind the museum, but the museum takes place also embracing a bit of the water because here there is a water sort of space, so people can enjoy the space there. Here is what I was talking about Copenhagen. Actually, this solution is for embracing the water, but at the same time takes also as a double element. It's embracing the water, but also having the passages. So there is this beautiful wooden passage which you can walk on if you just want to do a walk, but at the same time in summertime you can just jump and use as a tool for embracing the water and stay. And it's very beautiful because under there are some, in between the two levels there are some small housing, and in this small housing they have some NGOs association which they are developing a muscle, port harbor muscle breeding, so also to make aware people that the production of muscle can also increase the quality of water because it's somehow they are cleaning the water, and at the same time there are some also kayak renting. So there are many activities that they are happening along this path on the city of Copenhagen. That was the Rabu in Barcelona, in which, as you can see, they developed this sort of beautiful sort of space to stay and to work inside the old harbor area in Barcelona, which makes a more like livable place. This is a relatively very new project that they redeveloped this little island in the canal in Copenhagen. So this is the opera house in Copenhagen, and next to they developed the park. So it's a park that also has a climate adaptation solution in case of heavy rain or in case of storm surges from the sea, and it's like a really pleasant place inside the port area. So you can have an area in the port area which you go for take a bath, or there are some other area in which you can stay and enjoy the green area. And then we get back to Marseille, in which they developed this structure that is more like a sort of an attraction. And this place is exactly in front. On the left side, we have the old marina, the old port of Marseille that has still some small light activities like touristic activities there. And it's very nice because this is a sort of a very big attraction for people, for tourists there in Marseille. I think that almost all tourists, since that this is a mirror, they are taking a picture of themselves upside down because it's a big attraction. And it still has a main function, it's an attraction for tourists, but at the same time, in some days of the week, there is a market. So you can go and buy vegetable, or you can buy clothes or whatever. So it's like multifunctional, depending from the day, you can find different activities. Next. So and here there was also this game of, this way of building a storytelling of the students in which they were trying also to highlight those elements. And here we can go a bit more detail. So for culture, we found many activities or many situations in different artwork, which they had museum. Here there is a sort of a museum plus a concept playhouse. Here is a more cultural square in which there is also space for people to skate. Here there are more old ways to make culture in port areas, so there are artwork that were developed more in the past, in which they have like statues, and stuff like that. And otherwise you have an example like in Oktober, that in the new port area that was really developed, there are a university campus. So that building is the university campus that is part of building culture. So you don't have only a museum for building culture, but you have also a university. And then you have passages, as I was explaining before. This is the one in Barcelona. Here there are other. This is in Copenhagen. That they show that in order to, it's a passage, but at the same time it's trying to embrace the water, giving this feeling of being part of the water. And there they understood the importance of developing a good path in order to bring the people. And then you have more the experience. So here there are different harbors. Here there are places to stay. Here, still the example of that place in Copenhagen, we were able to put it in many of the elements because it's a passage, is a place where you can have an experience. Because it's part also, we have a sort of a festival in Copenhagen, which is called the Light Festival, and it's all around the port area. There are activities when there is the festival, and this passages is also used as a installation for many lights. So next, here there is green elements, and we discovered, for example, that in place like this is in Thessaloniki, which they have a very more old type of water from development. Still, they were working very well with the green areas. So Thessaloniki is one of the ports that has the highest percent of green spaces in those case studies. Also because it's a warmer place, and so they understood that in order to bring people there, they needed also to create a nice and a good environment to make the people feel to stay. And that was the Opera House. Next. And here is embracing the water. So here you have the Barcelona again, which inside the close to the port area there is also a space for a proper seaside. But otherwise here you have other example. This is, I think, is in Hamburg, and there is again Copenhagen, which we wanted to show, and here you can understand how it is the area. So you have where there is a passage that you have a specific way of leaving the harbor, and in the other side of the harbor you have a more green area. So it's still part, so you can swim this side or that side, depending on the moment of the day. So which area is reaching the sun before or after. and you have two different ways to embrace the water. So here that is more open and with green areas, and you have platform where you can stay, you have specific also swimming pool where you can swim, or the other way, the other side where if there is more a promenade, there are cafe and saunas that they are floating on the water. So there are many activities and things that they have. So the last part of the research was to try to understand through sections how those sports they were developed and which type of activities they were close to the land sea. So as we can see, I know there is the attraction that is a concert hall, and then there is a public space with green, with a promenade, and then there is water. So we did this section for many of the case studies, and the students, and we also focused on the type of edge in order to understand which was the percent of different type of edges that we were finding in the different port areas. So, and we noticed that when there was a redevelopment and the area where people was more living, we found that there were maybe still infrastructure, but a bit more soft edges, in which there were like stairs to get the water, a bit more friendly than the just, straight type of edge. In this case, the harbor of Aalborg, that is the second, the fourth biggest city in Denmark, is still very much productive. So as you can see, 89% of the edge is very straight. It's very like sharp. And only a small percent where mainly the people can swim or can embrace the water is a bit more soft. As a different way, you can see also in Barcelona, there is still a big percent of hard edge, and then there is a part of the harbor that is more like a beach side type of shore. Otherwise, you have the stones, or you have different kind. Obviously, this is an older project, if we watch on the other, so as a different type of solution. And then here is another example. So for each port, we try to understand which were the percent, in order to understand which were the right way, because the whole point of this research was then to bring some information based on some analysis to bring to the municipality of Odense and to the entrepreneur and the architect to say in which way they should follow some way of developing the resilient port. So next. Again, obviously we for guidelines that we then develop for the municipality, we watch more towards the port that they were in the Nordic countries, so Gothenburg, Copenhagen, over, because they were somehow more similar. Also, the culture was more similar to the one of Odense. As you can see here, Copenhagen still have very hard edges, but somehow there are many other type of edges and activities. So in some places there are also very green edges that they go into the harbor, or otherwise there are any other type of edges, as you can see here, that there are some even inside of it. So, and next one. So, just to conclude, the next one, please. So, when you are trying to understand, so this research was developed, and we try to understand two different points. But we have to remember that when we are planning for a port, we have always to keep we have to remember that we are planning for a port, and each port has its own culture, its own activities, and we have always to understand the local characteristics. So we cannot just take numbers as they are, but we have always to try to put them in the specific situation that we are working. So we have to plan a specific solution for the port that we are working. Obviously, we can take as inspiration, we can take as a knowledge what the research say, but as a planner, we have also to remember to be able to work on the other where we are, and we have to understand how this works. Resilience planning and regeneration strategies must guide both incremental change and transformation. The balancing between different dualities must be continually renegotiated, because this is also the idea to don't move away completely the port, but still keeping maybe some light activities, because actually economy is still part of the life. So the idea is that we should always keep renegotiating these activities and things that they are happening in the port in order to understand if they still make sense or not to them. And the citizen participation is very essential, because if in the old port, when they were not linked to the city, the port authorities was deciding everything. In this situation, in which we are trying to give back port areas to citizens and to the city, we need to involve the citizen. Otherwise, we will make maybe a beautiful project that nobody will use because it's not taking into account the needs and what the people would like to have. So, for example, as I show what they did in Copenhagen, Copenhagen is always, the city of Copenhagen is always working with the with citizens and involving the citizens in order to developing the strategies. Because it's the best way, because the people, the citizens are the ones that then they're gonna use those. And if they don't feel that they are important for them and they belong to them, then they will be not used and this project will be not successful. So there is always a very much importance in involving the citizen. It's always difficult task, but it is. And I think I get to the end. And I don't know if we can also finish in the next. Yeah.
Terima kasih Dr. Alberto for your very nice presentations, and we have learned a lot. Before I let students to propose their questions, let me make some conclusions regarding the lectures. We have seen it is important how the questions of connectivity between port and city develop throughout times, different era, different needs, and so on. And also, Dr. Alberto mentions some kind of pollutions of the port activities that may have impact. That's why the ports becoming far from. That's why ports developing far from the urban area. And that's how to embrace the idea of resilience. The idea of resilience, starting from the engineering, ecological and ecosocial resilience. It is important not only to adapt but also to continue learn, to continue transform into the our needs. And based on this resilience, how the ports reconnect again to the city by embracing great spaces, cultural activities, experiences, and so on and so forth, in order to consider again the context of the port that is suitable to the current urban context. And one of the approach, as we can see from Dr. Alberto, is the use of these typological studies of how land and sea connects. Throughout these studies, we can understand better the needs of the port. We can read better how the ports in the past and how the ports will be transformed in the future. So that's the whole points, and also consider the contextual approach in order to keep opening the door for different formations. So I guess, is there any questions from the students? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the time. I think, I guess, I hope you understand what I say, I guess. Okay, my name is Samurai, I'm from the Holy Running 2022. So, my question is, like, in Indonesia, like in Surabaya and in Jakarta, some of many airports are start from the river. So like in Surabaya, there's a port called Kalimas Port that just make at the old I think at 19 or 20 century ago, I guess there's just used as the main port, and then after the development of the city, our port is just become on the like other part of the city, like what can I call it? I guess like at the coastline, and then that makes our city that our city that the first one can be like develop waterfront or the riverfront, and then makes it like our city is make it because of the port makes it disconnected from the river or the sea. I guess like that. So is this kind of the research can be adaptable for our cities in like Indonesia or in Surabaya or Jakarta? Because of the development of the port is kind of in Indonesia, the port is kind of still developed, and the activity is very very active for now, I guess, until I think 20 or 30 years for now. I guess Mr. Yona can remain kind of my question. Thank you.
I think I don't know if you can use right away this type of results. But what you can do in order to understand is that you can, this is the beauty of the research. So you can use the same methodology and try to use case studies in each. So to see how other arbor around are developing and trying to understand if, for example, there are some cases in which they try to regenerate some part of the arbor and understand how you do, because obviously, as you also was highlighting, it's important the context. So probably we have our biggest arbor probably is smaller than the arbor here. Might be, I don't know exactly now the size, but also maybe the way we use it now maybe is also different. Because maybe we have different culture, we have different approach to the city. So the thing is that the first question is, do you think that Surabaya citizen or the municipality would like to embrace or take back part of the old part in redeveloping some part of more residential or more open for citizens area? Because that is the first step. Then obviously we know, because I think that is in general terms an evolution of port. Bigger is the port, bigger are the activities, more the port was developed more outside. So probably in the most close city part, the port that is close to the city center, it's a bit less maybe working on other type of port activities. So maybe that is the part where you can work. But still, I think that probably I still didn't do maybe something that we should discuss later. Maybe we should do an analysis also on port cities in Asia to understand if there are already best practices in which they redevelop part of ports. Because I can see, for example, the picture that I show you about Singapore. Singapore has a small area which is all completely developed, and I don't think that they can change the port in another way because they will not have space to develop the port somewhere else because their area is very small, it's very limited. So it depends, but I think there might be for sure some nice case studies probably to invest in. What I know is that the next spring, the UNESCO, because we have this strong relation, ours because we are UNESCO chair, and with the Ocean Decade. So the UNESCO has a program that is called Ocean Decade, that is towards having better seas, ocean, and now they are also fostering to have a better coastal cities. So the land sea interaction, coastal city. And the next spring they will have a conference in Qingdao, I think. There is a coastal cities in China, and they are working a lot on the waterfront. So they are developing this first conference about this connection between people and sea and ocean. And so I'm pretty sure that there are best practices also here in Asia. It's just a matter of analyzing them and understanding.
Did that answer your questions? Yeah, I think I completely agree with you, Dr. Alberto. It's essential to learn the context first. Yeah. What is the history of our port? The connection that I was doing earlier. Is there a potential for tourism development, for example? Do we need a new kind of housing? Do we need to redevelop? Because now the conditions along this river side is there are lots of abandoned because there used to be industrial complex, just like Hamburg, yeah. Alongside the river there are many industrial complexes and stuff like that. There are already abandoned because our economy is changed, not only focus on the industrial port. So yeah, try to learn the context. Yeah. Do we need is there potential for tourism, for example? How we benefits for transforming this river side? And one of the things that we see is we have to move because now our ports mainly is in the carriage activities, containers. Because most of innocent citizens, we don't use ships to go to any other area. We use planes, and so on and so forth. So this is the things that we have to put our questions. Do we have to move our containers, so on and so forth, to another area in order to retransform the port becoming part of the urban or not? Yeah. Is that important for us? Not so. Then we can continue with the analysis. Thank you. So, is there any questions from the students?
Okay, thank you for the great presentation. My name is Akan, I'm from batch 93, and so I want to ask about the embracing the water aspect of that. So earlier you mentioned about the embracing the water aspect, so which made me curious about the concerns on the sea level rise. So does Odense City or other ports in Denmark need to deal with that problem, or in the same problem and sea level rise, and is there any mitigation efforts for the port? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So, for example, the city of Copenhagen is a front-runner city for what concerns climate adaptation. So for cloudburst, but also sea level rise. So we will put it this way. In the port area, there are some areas that they are a bit redeveloped, which they can contain water in case of an excessive water, both from flash floods and rain, heavy rain, or also from the sea. But what the city and the harbor area, or what is the canal, that was the old harbor area, they are trying to work in different ways. So the idea of the city of Copenhagen is to build some sort of island in front of both entrances in order to control the water in case of a sea level rise or storm surges. I think it's one of the few projects in which the municipality, because it's not just the municipality, but it also is the government, because they are bigger, way bigger projects, and the municipality cannot have the capacity to carry this project alone, in which they took decision without involving citizens. So they are a bit in standby, because by building this island, there was also place of new housing, island. They have to dig, dredge sand somewhere in the water, and it can be dangerous doing that because it was a polluted water. So there are many problems, but I would say that they are working. And on top of that, I would say that when you embrace the water, means that you are also concerned about what the water can give or can take away. So I think there are many projects all around the world, also in Boston, in New York, in which they are trying to deal in coastal areas, not only in port cities, also with the nature-based solution. So sometimes you can make a beautiful port areas or beautiful coastal areas by using also nature-based solution or green infrastructure solution, in which you are using part of green, part of infrastructure, and those they are helping or supporting in embracing the water, embracing the relation of human with the water, but at the same time they can function also as solution to adapt for events. Just on the coast of Copenhagen, they developed an island that is called Park, and that island is made for storm surges. So they developed this island with the seaside, the dunes. The dunes, they are known as the natural dikes. And so that they developed because the area around there is really on the sea level. So in case of extreme events, they have to keep safe the place. So, I mean, there are many ways, and I think that embracing the water is the first step to understand the right way to build in the right way in order to be successful in case of an extreme event. Because you leave space for water.
Thank you, Alberto.
Yeah, I guess I think climate change issue is also important for cities. The first impact, and I think one of cities like Venice, they also try to adapt for this challenge, and I don't know, they develop this kind of infrastructures with how to say, fabricated concrete in order to dynamically adapt to the sea level rise. But I don't know if it works, or maybe you can explain also about that.
It is working, but it was also very expensive. So there are two ways for this type of, I would say that the one of them is a very hard infrastructure. So they develop this sort of wall underwater, and then when there is the very high tide, they will raise them. So they close the entrance of the seawater into the lagoon in order to don't have the. The problem is that you can work and staying under the water, or in Dutch, in Netherlands, they also do that on the top of the water, so they are more easy for the maintenance, because salt water is very damaging and stuff like that. So unfortunately, it was very expensive. It is working, so but it's also very expensive every time that they have to take it down. So we talk about 100,000 euro every time that they have to take it down, because then they have to clean, they have to fix every time. So it's a solution, yes, but maybe we should try. Maybe for Venice it was the only solution, because it's a special situation. But in other, it's always related to the context. In other contexts, probably there are some more nature-based solutions that they are working better than having an app infrastructure. So it's up. It depends.
There are many ways, especially if you go for nature-based solutions, not only benefits for the environment, but also reduce the cost and also benefits of society. And yeah, is there any questions again from the students? Maybe not only related to cost, but also related to resilience context. How we can resilience. Okay. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you, Dr. Alberto, for the lectures. Please give one more applause. And I think we are going to see you again tomorrow in the conference. And please just make sure that you are coming to the conference tomorrow, so that we can discuss and elaborate more in a global context. And last but not least, maybe we can take pictures together, yeah, as usual. So all the students, maybe we can take pictures for all students. Come to the stage.
Don't be afraid.
Oh, maybe you still sit there, and then we can take picture from you. Okay, I think that's what we're doing. So you don't have to wait for you to gather. Yeah. Thank you for the students. Now we can close these lectures. Thank you for being here. See you later. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.